You are listening to Insights from the Conference Board.
Hello, I'm Laura Sabattini, Principal Researcher in the Human Capital Center here at the Conference Board, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to another edition of Insights, a podcast series that helps talent leaders stay informed about current issues across all of human capital. Today, we're speaking with a few members of Barilla Diversity and Inclusion team, who I will introduce in a second, to speak about their employee resource group strategy and more specifically about how they have been able to engage employees across regions and in their plans. The Conference Board recently published a case studies on Barilla's work with their ERGs. It's entitled Engaging Employees Through ERGs, and the link to the case study can be found at the bottom of the podcast description on our website. Now, a few words about our guests from Barilla. We have two people joining us from the company's headquarters in Parma, Italy. We have Kristen Anderson, who serves as Barilla's Chief Diversity Officer. She reports to the company's CEO and leads the D&I board, comprised of internal members from 8 key countries, as well as external advisors. Louisa Erkley is Global Diversity and Inclusion Manager, and in this role, she partners with and supports the Barilla D&I board to drive programs that integrate diversity and inclusion in the business. She also works with D&I initiatives with different regions and countries. Last but not least, joining us from Ames, Iowa, we have Megan Christie here in the U.S. She's Assistant Plant Controller at Barilla Ames. Megan has been with Barilla almost 6 years, and she's joining us as the co-leader of the Ames ERG called Pulse, which has been in place since 2018. Kristen, Louisa, and Megan, welcome to the podcast. So, Kristen, I wanted to start with you so that we can provide some context for our conversation today. You and I first spoke about Barilla's ERGs in 2019. This was part of one of the studies that the Conference Board conducted on employee resource group. It's called What is Next for Employee Groups. And at the time, you shared Barilla's core strategy as well as how you had gone about taking ERGs to regions where people may not be familiar necessarily with this type of programs, and how you expanded your initiative by educating employees and people at Barilla about what ERGs are about and so on. Can you tell us a bit more about that and also how your strategy has evolved since the beginning?
Thank you, Laura, for the invitation. On behalf of the Barilla team, we're very pleased to be here today to speak to you about our D&I journey, but more specifically about our work with ERGs. As you may know, we started our D&I journey almost 7 years ago with very strong leadership commitment from our chairman and our CEO and our senior leadership team. We spent some years building a solid foundation by forming the D&I board that you mentioned, creating the role that I have as Chief Diversity Officer, training all employees on the business case for diversity and inclusion. We also launched a survey biannually to get feedback from employees around the world. And we learned from others by partnering with key organizations such as Catalyst and GLAAD and Tyler Clementi Foundation. I say that background information because these steps were critical to making the ground fertile for the growth of ERGs in Barilla, which we began in 2015 in the US. I'm an American and I've lived and worked in 7 different countries over the last 20 years. So for me, the concept of employees volunteering to form an affinity group to make what we call the invisible needs of the minority visible to the majority is much more comfortable for me. Mm-hmm. But this is not the same in each culture. So when we wanted to expand our ERGs outside the US, we learned very quickly that you cannot cut and paste. And I give you an example. We planned our first roundtable event to launch Voce ERG in Italy. Voce stands for voice, as you know well, Laura, in Italian. And this is our ERG that works on increasing inclusion of LGBTQ plus allies within our company. And we had an event planned in Italy at our headquarters here in Parma with our D&I board member, David Mixner. And we had hundreds of participants that signed up and showed up for the event. And at the end, we saw the sign-up sheet. There was 12 people. 12 people signed up for the ERG. We said, okay, we have a lot of energy, but I think employees in some cultures don't understand what an ERG is. You know, it's not an obvious thing for them to get involved in. So we needed to take a step back and focus on educating our Barilla people on why to form an ERG, why to join one, and what are the benefits for you as an employee and for the company, and tell them that they can be part of the culture change that they want to see at Barilla. We also really focused on consistent communication about ERGs in many forums. In our town halls, which we have locally in local language, we also have them videoed 3 times a year in English. We have executive sponsors for each ERG, and they spend time talking to their groups and the company in general about ERGs and the value of ERGs. Our CEO travels around the world, and when he goes to different sites, he has a breakfast with the ERGs, specifically to understand how they're doing and what they need to help and what support they need. In regional sales meetings, we even had ERG open days, where plant employees and office and sales employees can come to learn more. And we actually named one of our years, which was 2018, the year of ERGs, because every year we have a theme. And so that really got the focus and attention on the ERGs. And the D&I board gets regular update from the ERGs. So now we have more than 1,300 members around the world. And that Voce Italy that only had 12 people at the beginning now has 250.
That's great.
So really, you need to culturally communicate and train people and let them be aware that there's a benefit for not only for the company, but for them. Yeah. And then the second piece is really to develop tools and provide a governance framework. We've created ERG toolkits for both the office ERGs and for the plants. And Megan will talk more about the plants in a moment. And some of our bigger sites with a larger population, we have the traditional, I call it traditional ERGs around a specific affinity. For example, inclusion of people with disabilities, different multiculturality, different generations, gender equality, and work-life balance. But we also developed a second model for smaller sites where they can decide their focus areas annually, depending on employee feedback and the external culture in the country in which they're working. And these can change from year to year. So, for example, last year, our Russia colleagues formed an ERG called Bridge, which has both office workers and factory workers. And they work on areas that are important to them culturally, and that can make the culture of the company better and also can address some cultural challenges in Russia. And finally, I would just say create opportunities for ERGs to share learnings and best practices amongst them around the world. Since we have 15 now, we do ERG sharing webinars and sharing materials to try to learn from each other in this path.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. Yes, this is great background. And I know, you and I spoke about this before, of course, but I know that this is so helpful. We get questions about taking ERGs globally, but also about how to engage employees in different regions a lot. So I think that people, many companies will be listening to this very carefully. And I had a kind of a follow-up, given, the current situation with this global COVID-19 health crisis that it really impacted many regions. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts or any examples how you've been able to engage your ERGs during the crisis, and now that people are in some regions slowly going back to the office, and if you have any examples of things that you've been able to do with your groups during the current current events and current COVID-19 crisis.
Well, during the COVID-19 crisis, we involved directly our ERGs and asked them to be our network of listeners about the concerns and needs of our Barilla people. Mm-hmm. They each organized their own way, setting up listening groups, surveys, motivational meetings, feedback sessions with all their members or simply with people interested to speak up. They identified at-risk groups and collected specific needs in this critical period. Results then have been consolidated into global key themes and presented to the CEO, to the D&I board, and our chief HR officer. Mm-hmm. And they were also able to suggest a draft of action plans. There were very important needs identified from the feedback from our colleagues. As an example, we heard that there are many challenges for our mental health during this crisis. And HR responded with a program. In Italy, it was called Al tuo fianco, which means by your side, in which mental health counseling, childcare, elderly care, tutoring for children, assistance for those not self-sufficient is provided with the program.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. No, this is great and great examples. Thank you, Louisa. We are now going to take a short break for some quick announcements and be back in just a minute to continue our conversation with the Barilla's team about their ERGs.
Can you, your team, or your company benefit from insights such as the ones provided in this podcast? They are immediately available when you join the Conference Board, a membership-based think tank that delivers trusted insights for what's ahead. Reaching across industries and geographies, we bring together our noted experts, senior executives from the world's largest companies, and nonpartisan practical research to help you address your most important business issues. Our membership packages are tailored to your organization's unique needs and budget. To learn more about our offerings, go to www.conferenceboard.org and click Join on the top bar to connect with one of our product specialists.
Hello, and welcome back to our conversation with Barilla's team about their initiative Engaging Employees Through Employee Resource Groups, with our three guests, Kristen Anderson, Luisa Ercoli, and Megan Christie. Before the break, we outlined some of the history and strategy behind Barilla's ERGs. The case study that we created with them highlights also that a couple of years ago, Barilla's ERG started to engage plant workers. Megan, I wanted to hear your perspective on this. Can you speak a little bit about this opportunity? I know that many companies struggle with engaging employees and workers outside the office when it comes to employee resource groups. So I would love to hear your insights on this.
Thank you, Laura. The ERGs at the plant are quite different. There's over 85% of the employees there that are hourly. And so we're also in a 24/7 environment. That was one of the things that we found, even going to different symposiums in our community, that we didn't really relate to any of the ERGs in the different companies. So it is quite different, manufacturing 24/7, completely different model. One of the things we did, so I co-founded Pulse with Brian Impakoven, and he was an hourly employee. And we actually went out and recruited authentic leaders. So we went after people that are natural leaders. They're able to influence their teams. They're kind of the voice of their departments. They're really open and are able to influence. So that was one of the things we did at the plants. Of those founding members, there's 6 males, and they were all hourly, and then there's 2 females who are both on the salary team. We also, one of the great things about Barilla and this push for ERGs is we had support. So our plant director at the Ames plant, Larry Covington, he was our champion. We also had another manager, our Q&T manager, who was our ERG supporter. She also focuses on other D&I events in the Ames plant. And then we had corporate support as well. So Talita Erickson is our corporate supporter. So she's able to, really be a sounding board for us, get us connected with other people that are coming up with the same problems that we might need help with. So not only that support, Kristen mentioned the D&I board, but the D&I board actually came to Ames. And so Pulse was able to, highlight what we were doing, what some of our challenges were, and anything, any help that they could offer us. They were really there to support us. Another thing, it wasn't just the support of the team, but also Barilla gave our ERG a budget. So we can do a lot of things, but we can do so many more different things with money. And that's a big thing to have that support.
Definitely. And quick follow-up, do you connect with other ERGs as well from your plant?
Well, so we have Voce, which Kristen mentioned. So there is a Voce branch here in Ames. And then also it's not an ERG, but it's a team that focuses on communication. So we
Right.
all work together.
Thank you. This is very helpful. And I know a lot of organizations will be interested in learning more and reading more about your success here. So it's great. So
Laura, can I add one thing on to Megan?
Yeah,
just
of course.
to one point. Two things. One is the connection. As I mentioned earlier, I think we have these sharing sessions, and that also includes the plant ERG leaders. So anyone can come to these sharing sessions, because what you might learn from an ERG in Nordics, which we have one that it also has our factory workers in that ERG, or in Russia, can translate. So I think that's very important. The second point that Megan talked about was company support. Not only is there support within the plant and within the Barilla America office, there's also support within the supply chain. So they had a supply chain for the Americas. Fabio, he really believes strongly the ERGs are going to make the plant environment better, which is going to relate to better business. Mm-hmm. And so he's the sponsor, also giving training hours to start the plant's ERGs, which then our head of all of global supply chain has also said that's what he wants to do. So it really helps kickstart the ERGs when you have, as Megan said, budget, hours to have people get involved, and then the strong leadership commitment.
Yeah, exactly. And those are, success factors in D&I initiatives in general, but here it seems especially important when you're trying something new like this. And speaking of that, and this is a question to the group, or to Louisa and Kristen, who I know you work with the D&I board there. But do you have any examples of, you started this initiative, you're trying all these different things. Are there ERG benefits that you didn't expect or that surprised you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. ERGs played a key role in amplifying any activity the company organized for our people. They get people from all parts of the company, and they involved people in D&I. I always say that the ERGs are the best boosters of our communication and engage our people in the culture change to be more inclusive of all diversities. So this is really the unexpected benefit from them.
I completely agree with Louisa. And then two benefits that I for sure did not expect, and that we saw. One is leadership development. We saw ERG leaders who came forward that wouldn't be someone that you would expect to be taking a big leadership role, but their passion and energy comes through, and it's really a way to develop and highlight leaders of the future. Mm-hmm. The second is feedback from people in the ERGs, and I'm talking specifically about Parma, where we have 1,200 employees. People said ERGs are breaking down the silos between functions. Some people told me, I've never worked with anyone in this function, but now we're in the ERG together, and we can have a good, healthy debate, and we can come up with better ideas together. And so it's really it's a perfect example of why diverse teams actually are more creative and innovative than homogeneous teams.
Definitely. And as an Italian, I'm so excited to see an initiative successful in Italy, of course, where I think I'm hoping other companies will sort of take you as an example and start thinking about this more broadly. So we're almost at time. I wanted to throw a last question to the group, and just to wrap up our conversation. And thanks again for the time. Do you have any other thoughts on the topic that maybe I didn't ask about, or something that you think organizations should consider when working with their ERGs? And I'll let you, decide the order of response, but I wanted to throw this out to the entire team.
Megan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say really what's worked in Ames is just to create an open environment and listen. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that we've been able to do. And that really drives the focus of what Pulse does in Ames.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm picking up something from my private life, because I'm a single mom of 2 children, and I'm very passionate about work-life balance. And as the experts say, the compounding stress from a long workday can be damaging without the right support from the company, family, and friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I strongly believe in the power of ERGs, because they focus the energy that comes from all employees at the company.
That's great.
And I'll just add a final couple of thoughts that I think are the kind of keys to success for ERGs. I mentioned this before. Create a global framework, a governance system that allow for local flexibility. Engage your leaders as active sponsors. Executive sponsors can really make this journey much more fruitful and really give a lot of support and recognition for the ERGs. And the last point is the recognition. You got to recognize the ERG leaders, recognize them when there's a promotion. This was a promotion, this person was an ERG leader. Communicate the value of the ERGs and continue to focus on their motivation, because in the end, they will make the cultural difference that will make the company stronger.
Great. Those are great last thoughts. So thank you all again for your time and for sharing your insights. And thank you to our listeners for joining. If you enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe to our Insights podcast series or explore the entire catalog of podcast programming from the Conference Board. You can find our catalog on our website at www.conferenceboard.org/podcasts. This is Laura Sabattini from the Conference Board, and thank you for your time, and to next time.
This has been Insights from the Conference Board.